I thought I'd get back onto the content wagon after I got back from YCS Vegas, but this is not what I expected my first new upload in a while to be like. For the most part, I've tried to stay away from drama videos, but this is one where it strikes directly personal to my heart because it involves a personal friend of mine, Laura, and another prominent creator within the scene, DistantCoder. Now, I don't think I need to reiterate this, but do not go on a personal crusade against anyone. There's always three sides to a story: person A, person B, and the truth of the whole matter. And while I am only going to be including allegations which have documentation and first-hand experience with, whether from my own experiences or things that they've said on stream, please take what you hear in this video with a massive grain of salt. This entire saga, although it was brought to light with Lofton's tweet/Discord thread, which by the way is an absolute dick move to leak something shared with you in a moment of vulnerability and confidence based on some twisted personal principle. And spoiler alerts, you're just an asshole with shitty principles and not some martyr savior of the Yu-Gi-Oh community or any community in general, was something that had been happening since 2021, and being that Laura and I have been friends for an extremely long period of time, she confided in me while these things were going on, but swore me to secrecy because that's her prerogative, this is her story, and I don't have any right to say anything more or less than she wants to be known. However, since everything is already public, and after talking about it with her, she's given me the green light to share her experiences on her behalf and my opinions regarding the entire matter. If you want to hear their stories and anecdotes straight from the source, I will be including any and all screenshots provided to me as well as their channel links in the description down below, just in case you want to watch their VODs in their entirety and come to your own personal conclusions. So, let's start at the beginning. Let's start off with the easiest piece of evidence, which are the Lofton screen caps, which include a history of abuse, both physical and emotional, between Coder and Laura, and we're going to start off with the former. Now, this is not an isolated experience between the two, being that an allegedly ex-hookup partner also claims that Coder would get aggressive, nor was it a one-off incident, but something that happened on multiple occasions of Laura and Coder putting each other's hands on each other. According to Laura, in moments where Coder is physically coming after her, screaming in her face, making her feel physically threatened and concerned for herself, Laura has lashed out and defended herself physically, once by closing a door on his hand while he was coming after her, in which he immediately called his friends to call the police onto Laura, Laura slapping him in the face while he was in her face yelling and screaming and threatening her, and another incident of Coder hiding texts between him and another girl that he was hiding from her, resulting in Laura feeling pretty betrayed yet again and beating on his chest in exasperation and sadness. There was also another incident where at a convention, Laura was helping translate stuff to a guy who was pretty lost due to the language barrier during a show, and Coder turned around and said, "Why are you focusing on him? Focus on me, not some random. Who gives a fuck about him? What about us?" and losing his temper. Ultimately, back at the hotel, Laura retaliated, had enough, and threw her phone at him, which smacked him in the hand. However, the abuse does go both ways, as I mentioned earlier, with one instance in particular, Coder being physically violent with Laura, where during a fight between the two, and where Laura was crying, Coder grabbed a pillow, slammed Laura against the couch with it, smothering her. Her neck snapped against the edge frame like a little whiplash, while he kept screaming at her to shut up and stop crying. Now we're going to talk about the emotional abuse between Coder and Laura. Coder, for the entirety of their relationship, has done his best to isolate Laura from her male friends, claiming that guys are only friends with females for one reason, implying that Laura only has male friends who only want to either get with her or sleep with her, and would act out and be extremely temperamental whenever she was friendly with any male party. This in turn caused Laura to be extremely isolated from all of her IRL friends, cut off all of her male friendships entirely, and made her almost entirely reliant on him for everything. One example of this is actually within the Yu-Gi-Oh community and him isolating her entirely from it. If you guys remember, during the pandemic, Laura was actually doing her best to try and learn Yu-Gi-Oh and get more into the community. If you saw on her Twitter, she posted a lot of pack opening, box openings, just streamed Yu-Gi-Oh, that sort of deal. However, during this time when Coder and Laura were on one of their breaks, Coder admitted that he could not mentally tolerate or bear to see her at events, especially since they share a local scene, enough that when Laura was trying to receive coaching to improve as a player so she could actually go to these events and compete, Coder begged that player who she hired as a coach to not coach her so that she couldn't invade his space and he wouldn't have to see her at events. Additionally, he would constantly harass her for how she dressed. Laura, she's a massive gym rat and usually wears standard baggy comfy clothes because that's what she feels comfortable in and is easy to work out in. However, Coder would constantly berate and accuse Laura of trying to attract male attention through her pictures, complained that she never dressed the way that he wanted to dress her whenever she dressed up for Instagram or Twitter, despite her constantly dressing up for him whenever he asked her to or whenever they went out, and overall just being extremely spiteful of Laura's physicality, enough that she claims that multiple times she wishes that she did look different or worse in order for her not to attract attention and in turn having Coder blow up on her. Specifically, Laura once wore legging shorts in a gym picture and talked about how she was able to finally overcome her anorexia and feeling comfortable in such clothing again. Well, he immediately disregarded her attempt to share her progress and said, "Why are you showing off your ass to the world?" Another point between the two is regarding bedroom manners. Coder would often use guilt and emotional manipulation to get his way in the bedroom, and if Laura didn't want to have sex for whatever reason, at times he would continually pressure her until she complied. Their final encounter, in which Laura was too tired and just wanted to cuddle with him, he shouted, swore at her, blamed Laura for ruining the mood and ruining everything, slammed the door, and left. Another point is Coder utilizing suicide threats in order to preserve his relationship, where one time when Coder and Laura were having a fight in the car, Coder threatened that if she broke up with him, he would crash his car. According to Laura, this is not the first time Coder has pulled something like this. This is one of the clips that I managed to source that directly talks about this particular subject matter.
But it was big for me. I would never, ever, ever force anyone to do anything. I just got upset in that moment. And I recognize that that's bad. Saying stay in the relationship or I will kill myself does sound like forcing someone to do something. I was in the wrong a lot of times. Okay? I was in the wrong a lot of times.
And finally comes the cyclical breakup and makeup cycle. They would always have some sort of fight, have a mini breakup, Coder promising to be better and love bombing her with promises of marriage, moving in together, having kids. They get back together thinking that things are going to change and things would be good for a week before Coder fell off the horse and the cycle of abuse would happen all over again. Laura gave me permission to talk about a scenario where I witnessed the abuse literally firsthand, and I just wanted to give a brief rundown regarding my experience, where once in Laura's server, we were all just enjoying a game night of hanging out, playing games, playing stuff like Valorant, etc. when Coder popped into the voice channel we were all in. We all said hi and stuff, and for the most part, he kind of just sat there silently and called for a couple of minutes, and after a while, he said that he wanted to watch some XQC and left. And immediately after, Laura started getting massively stressed because Coder was flaming her in the DMs, telling her to ditch her friends, that he wanted her to ditch us for him, but she was steadfast in saying, I already discussed with him about this, we agreed that today was going to be a day that I was going to spend with my friends / you guys. And while one of our mutual friends, Ashes, was talking shit about Coder and how he was being insane and completely possessive of her, he rejoined the call at that moment, and he immediately got into a massive shouting match with Ashes and Laura, saying things like, I don't give a shit about your stupid little friends, they don't matter, ditch these losers, and all sorts of other hurtful stuff before he left the server. Laura apologized to us and left with him. Now we're going to discuss possibly the most horrifying part of this saga, in my opinion, the time Coder sent Laura to a psych ward, where on Laura's 24th birthday, she was going to go out to a bar with friends, and at the party was a guy who previously had feelings for Laura, but they stamped things out, and things are completely platonical. Unfortunately for Coder, as we mentioned earlier, who does not take the idea of Laura having relationships with men in any capacity lightly, was not having any of that and proceeded to call Laura and berate her, continually yell at her, put her down. Laura's drunk, feeling super shitty about it all, and on the phone says, "You make me feel like shit. I'm gonna step out into traffic and get hit by a car. Bye," and hangs up, sits on the curb crying, and her friends have to console her after another massive fight. Now, Coder takes this scenario and, instead of reflecting, decides to tear up his room, go apeshit, and convince his dad to call the local police onto Laura to admit her into the psych ward of a hospital for suicidal ideation, in which she gets picked up by the police later that night. And I just want you guys to know that throughout Laura's entire life, she has never, ever, except in this specific moment, ever said anything even closely related to suicidal ideation or any suicidal thoughts whatsoever. Now, this hospital is borderline unlivable. She is not given any food, she has no water, she has no cell access, and is unable to sleep because they're drawing blood from her every single hour. Here's a clip that Laura managed to grab from the hospital of one of the elderly patients basically being ignored while they're in complete and total pain, and this is just a iceberg surface level of how bad things really got. So yeah, again, conditions at this hospital were extremely poor, to say the absolute least. After talking with a nurse to discharge her, she's picked up and is able to go home, but a night of being forced into a dilapidated psych ward by her own partner and being starved, dehydrated, and isolated is an extremely traumatic experience, to say the least. Now here, I just wanted to talk about my own closing personal thoughts. So if you wanted to only listen to the documented factual stuff, click off the video here. But overall, I don't think it needs to be said that these two were in one of the most dysfunctional relationships we have ever seen, and were definitely not meant for each other in any capacity. Will I pretend that Laura lashing out at Coder at times such as the con, or when Coder was hiding girls around her, was justified in any capacity? Absolutely not, and she should have just not done that at all, full stop. That's entirely on her. Will I say that Laura trying to protect herself when she was physically threatened by Coder was justified? Yes, I do think that fight or flight, just trying to protect yourself in an extremely dangerous scenario, is completely justified. And do I think that Coder is an insane person for years of emotional abuse, gaslighting, sexual coercion, physical abuse, suicide threats in order to get what he wants, and a whole host of other issues that I believe that he should never be in any internet space again? Absolutely. I think that despite the issues the two had against each other, to me it personally feels like comparing a bucket of water to an ocean of abuse. And there really is no comparison, and to me it feels like all of the wheels on this relationship wagon completely fell off due to Coder's own shortcomings, which is especially disappointing due to the fact that in regards to Coder's own response post, he straight up lied about his physical abuse towards Laura. You could see in the Twitter post right here, you could see that he said, "I did not hit Laura, I did not bruise Laura," full stop. But you could check on both Laura and his own stream where they both claim, and Coder admits, that he did smother Laura and smack her against a couch, which I think counts as physical abuse in my book. Again, a good portion of these allegations and anecdotes have no real hard proof. We don't have videos of any of the physicality that happened or any of the threats or anything, and we should all be taking this with a large grain of salt. However, I do believe that the hard evidence that Laura has provided in regards to screenshots as well as documentation of things such as the hospital scenario should be taken extremely seriously and gives massive credibility to her side of the story. And again, we should believe that, in my opinion, that she was the much larger victim in this two-sided, shitty, toxic relationship. Again, their VODs and all screenshots are linked within the description if you do want to come to your own conclusions, and you could receive, quote-unquote, both sides of the story. Ultimately, please support Laura throughout this time. Fuck Lofton for spreading business that isn't his to spread and being an invasive piece of shit. And fuck Coder for being an abusive boyfriend, and I hope he leaves the space for good. If you're wondering why this video is being monetized, it's because all proceeds of this video will go to a charity of domestic abuse, and stamping that out for good. Anyways, that's going to be it. and this is the last I will hopefully ever have to talk about this sort of scenario again.